Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to develop a very simple Hello World Samsung Gear application. And just for reference, I'm at developer.samsung.com and I've clicked through the SDK tools and then for the gear, and then you can see that I've got the gear standalone. I've downloaded this Tizen SDK for wearables, and I'm going to go through this Hello World tutorial, which you can see through the click here. So this does a pretty good job of getting you through all of the steps, but I ran into a couple of problems getting the emulator up and running, and so I'm creating this tutorial to help you avoid those mistakes. So you can see over here in my home directory under the Tizen Wearable SDK folder, which will be created once you download this and then install it, I expand into the IDE folder and I've got the Eclipse modified SDK here. So I'm just going to go with the default workspace, click OK there, and it'll open this up real quickly for us. Once that's going, I get a tooltip of the day here, so we'll close that out and I'll bring over my IDE. So blank project, nothing here yet. I'm going to go under File, New Tizen Wearable Web Project, and then go with the Wearable UI, Basic Application, and just give it a name. So we'll call this Hello World Sample, or whatever you want to call it, and click Finish. And it'll do its thing and create it all. What you'll get is the Hello World Sample, or whatever you call it, your project, and then if you expand, you've got your index.html, which the tutorial, if you look at that, has you modifying and editing here this steps 2, 3, and 4. But if you went through the default, then all of that will already be here for you. So really all you need to do is build. So if you come under Project, Build Project, or hit F10, then it will give you a couple of warnings, or at least it does for me. No problem there, and then we're good to go, and we've got our WGT file that it creates, and that's what's going to be deployed onto either the device or the emulator. So it just kind of packages it all up, and then it's ready to go. So at this point, if you hit Run, then you're going to get this lovely error that says that you need to select an emulator device in the Connection Explorer. And if you look over here in the lower left, you've got our Connection Explorer, but there's nothing listed. So let's go ahead and click on this manager, and then we'll need to create a new VM. I'm going to give mine the 320/320 for the Gear Fit 2, or the Gear 2. Okay, and I'll give it a name. So sample Gear 2, and we'll confirm that, and it'll create it, and there it is. And if we run this, it's going to go through the whole setup. Give it some time. It takes a minute, especially if you have. It's going to create this and then do the bootstrapping and loading the Linux on this emulator. So we'll set that off to the side here and let it do its thing. You can close down the emulator manager if you want and come back here. And it's going. You can right click on this emulator and see that you've got the name itself, and then it's running on port 26101. So if you click that, you can get some more detailed information. Ultimately, once it's up and running, you can kick open the shell or take a screenshot or force close it, that kind of thing. You can also rotate it to get a different view. Let's imagine the user's turning their hand, and so you can see that it's kicking off Linux kernel here, and eventually it'll give us the little clock widget will come up. So it was at this point where I had my emulator up and going, and I had my Hello World application compiled and ready to go, but I still couldn't get this to work. So now we're up and running, and here we've got our emulator. And this didn't work for me. This didn't come up like that. So what I had to do was actually come in here and click on this Remote Device Manager, and then you could add it. So I had to click New, and then give it the name, which was this Sample Gear 2. And then the IP. Fortunately, the port is by default, so 127.0.0.1 is our local, and we add that in, and it's going to create a kind of a duplicate here. So if yours doesn't show up for whatever reason, I mean, I tried rebooting and it didn't do anything. So you may or may not have this show up nicely. So fortunately, there it is, it's running. So we can select this thing and you can see some information about the file system, and you can do file copy in either direction. But now that I've got this thing loaded here, and we'll click on our Hello World sample, and then now we can do a run, and it will bind to this emulator since that's what was selected. You can see that it's launching it down here, and there's the percentage counting up of 62, 67, so on. And then here's our emulator, and the Hello World app is running. Okay, so the missing piece that I had was, if it's not showing up here in the emulator list, then click on this remote device manager, and then just create new and add the thing in, whatever the name is. In my case, it was sample_gear_2. Give it whatever name you want, and then the IP, just set that to 127.0.0.1, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so happy coding.